interested in sort of developing a small and like very curated collection that represents contemporary book arts as well, so that the folks that I'm trying to do outreach with see themselves represented in the library and the museum in some capacity.
This is Evie with WKNC. I got to talk with the NCMA's head librarian, Wang, organizer of the N-Paper Book Fair in the fall. We talked about Raleigh's pivotal place in self-publishing and book culture largely as it relates to community and the people. I hope this helps you in your journeys through the Triangle and its cultural hubs.
I'm Andrew Wang. I'm the head librarian here at the North Carolina Museum of Art. Previously, I've worked in libraries around the country, and so I actually got a dual master's degree in library science and art history, so that's my background. I always joke that I was drawn to art librarianship specifically because I don't read that much. I love books with pictures, and this field really gives me the opportunity to appreciate and work with literature that is art focused and visual focused. Traditionally, library spaces were really sort of used as like storehouses for books. And so a big part of a librarian's work was cataloging and maintaining physical collections. That still is a large part of librarianship today, but we see a general trend shifting towards focusing on public services and a lot of interdisciplinary work. So the connection to N-Paper, for instance, is this sort of desire to promote the library, doing outreach and connecting dots to disparate communities within our region. And of course, a big part of librarianship is also focusing on visual literacy, which is more important than ever these days. A lot of people think about literacy as in like the ability to read and determine what is and is not a credible source. Those are just like pieces of literacy, but you can also apply those and even more complex related ideas to visuals as well. So when you look at an image, how do you determine whether or not it's credible? Is it appropriate to use for certain situations? And then now, of course, with the advent of AI technology, really transforming how we consume information, it's more important than ever to know and make sure that we know that something is accurate if we're using that information to support our beliefs. It's really incorporating the thoughts and values of our community. In that way, it's just kind of like a quick snapshot book arts in North Carolina right now. That's something that's, I think, unique to Raleigh in this region, is a real resistance to elitism, really. It seems like people are really interested in sharing information and learning from each other. There's so many low cost and free opportunities to do art making in this area. I know that I'll speak to N-Paper at least, that's something that we intentionally wanted to be a free, open to all sort of program. So I think that going to N-Paper and communicating with the people who table at this fair is a great way to get connected, especially since this is a gathering of so many disparate parts of the book arts and print communities. So you have younger folks who are making zines, like really low cost, stapled together, sort of like easy self-published material. And then you have retirees who are making like really beautifully crafted book arts that are essentially sculptures, and then like everything in between as well. So it's just such a great opportunity to sort of like pick ideas and develop partnerships with people and create something new. Lots of opportunities to collaborate. And then beyond N-Paper, I think just in this area, I've also seen so many other workshops floating around everywhere. There's so much, you look in any direction. So the availability of folks to create their own zines and publish their own ideas exactly the way they want it, artistically or in terms of like the exact language they want to use, is so powerful.
This has been Evie with WKNC. Editing and producing by me, and music by Samuel Shepard. Thanks for listening. See you next time.